The U.S. just experienced two major bank failures in California and New York, and since then, silver and gold prices went through a mini surge, proving that panic can encourage some folks to turn to precious metals as a safe haven. But do they have a solid stacking strategy in place? Well, we're going to talk about that and a lot more, so make sure you stay tuned. YouTube, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. And before I get started, I just want to take a second to thank everyone for the amazing support you've given the channel. It is appreciated more than you know. Seriously, I mean it. Best damn community on YouTube. Also, a shout out to everyone who participated in the channel round, the Bulldog auction last week. Had a great turnout and had some fun doing it. But totally flattering that anyone was interested in a first-time pourer's work. Awesome. We had a lot of fun. It was fun. Now today, we are not going to get into details about the recent bank failures because, well, let's face it, that's been covered enough here on YouTube, right? But we are going to talk about ensuring stackers have a solid strategy for 2023, especially as new stackers enter the game due to events like the failures. Now, I'm not saying the following points that you're going to see are something you need to adhere to because, let's face it, everyone's situation is different. But this video is more to get folks thinking about the true reasons they're stacking and some potential pitfalls to avoid. All right, as I alluded to earlier, we just had two large banks fail recently, and they were Silicon Valley Bank in California and Signature Bank in New York just after that. And ironically, these two banks just comprised the second and third worst bank failures in U.S. history, respectively. Not good notoriety. Now, I'm not going to get in the wire of how it all went down. Like I said, there's enough of that here on YouTube. But as expected, people took aggressive action by pulling money out of their accounts all over the country. And it's almost a certainty that these failures were at least one of the situations that led to a recent spike in volume of precious metal sales. It goes to figure, right? Silver and gold had nice little increases on the charts, reflecting some of that inherent panic out there. And because of that, today we're going to go over some solid strategies that can help ensure that newer stackers don't make their situations worse by making poor buying decisions. Be sure to stick it out to the number one reason at the end since it's the most important. And without further ado, let's get it. We're going to start off with tip number 7. We're working our way down. Have a plan and know why you're stacking. Now, are you stacking as a hedge against inflation, as a savings account, something to leave your kids, yada, 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 etc., etc.? I say this because knowing why you're stacking can actually help you keep your focus on what to buy. And if you're out there just buying random stuff, well, you might want to reevaluate that strategy. But then again, if that's how you like to stack and you're happy with it, so be it, right? Look, the beautiful thing about a plan is this. You can always adjust it as you go for whatever you feel is a better fit for your budget or for what present financial situations dictate. But try to make sure you have a plan in place regardless. Tip number 6, know your stack. You got to ask yourself the important questions, guys. How much generic silver should you own? Should you diversify in other metals? Should you stack only government bullion, bars, rounds, constitutional? These are all things to consider, and only you can make the determination of what's going to work for you and your budget. But again, we talked about the plan. Try to have one in place. But really, the basics of silver stacking can be pretty much summed up in just 2 sentences. Number 1, government-backed bullion is going to be more expensive than generic, but it'll bring back more of your premium if you sell at the right time. It also features far more liquidity than generics. And number 2, while generic silver is cheaper, bear in mind that when you go to sell it, you're likely going to get at or near spot price. So you paid less for it, you'll get less in a sale. And unfortunately, with a good chance of losing $1 or $2 per ounce, depending on what you paid for it. Now, I personally only carry about 50 ounces of generics in my stack, but there is nothing wrong with having them. Nothing. Especially if you're stacking for weight. But you have to consider this. Why are you stacking? Are you stacking for an investment return? Well, then you might want to spend a little bit more for government-backed bullion. Are you stacking for a hedge against inflation? Well, maybe a healthy mix of bullion and generics will do. But what about the almighty SHTF situation? Well, that's when stacking for weight becomes more of a priority. But if you're considering an SHTF scenario, don't forget to stack the most important stuff. That is food, water, ammo, meds, camping gear, etc., etc. A lot of SHTFers get so hell-bent on stacking metals They forget the important stuff that'll help keep you alive if it does go down. Also, you have to remember that in the early days of an SHTF, your silver might not do you a bit of good. It's most likely going to be more beneficial in the recovery stages. Tip number 5, let's talk a little bit about diversification. You need to understand your portfolio. And one thing to avoid for sure is having silver become the majority of your portfolio. Once your silver percentage hits around 10 to 15% of your overall portfolio, you should consider diversifying in other metals like gold, or completely out of metals and consider other investments like S&P 500 index funds, dividend stock funds, real estate, etc., etc. You got to stay on top of things. Tip number 4, speaking of stocks, should you consider ETFs or mining stocks? Well, that's completely up to you, as long as you do your due diligence. Yes, diversification is important, but you don't want to try fooling around with options you don't completely understand. And as always, if you're not sure about what to invest in, consult with a professional before you invest a single dime. As far as ETFs go, I'm of the firm belief that if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And mining stocks they're a crapshoot most of the time. I know some folks have made money on that stuff, but personally, you'll never hear me recommend those two options. To each their own, though. Tip number 3 is going to be 90% silver. Now, I believe in having a decent amount of 90% silver in my stack, but that doesn't mean it's going to appeal to all stackers. I do know quite a few who just won't touch the stuff. But for me, I consider 90% to be real money, or, well, money that was once and still is backed by something intrinsic, and not the garbage fiat we have today. Now, once the 90% stuff is gone, it is gone. Personally, I think it's the ultimate in fractional silver. Now, that said, if you decide to stack 90% silver, half dollars seem to be the most popular, whether they're 1964 and below Kennedys, Benjis, or Walkers. But just know that the Walkers do tend to carry a higher premium than the others. And if you dig back even further into the Barbers and the Seated Liberties, well, now you're getting into even higher premiums. But halves and quarters and dimes, they're all solid coins to add. I'm actually a Mercury nut, so I stack a lot of dimes, and the Walking Lib halves aren't far behind as my second favorite. And as far as the 35 and 40% silver coins go, I just don't get into them. There are so many out there who just love their 35% war nickels and the 40% Kennedys. They're just not my thing. But in the end, you know what? You go with what you like if you decide to stack junk silver. Tip number 2, collectibles, high premium silver, and numismatics. Now look, I'm a firm believer in keeping the collectible and slab stuff to a minimum, but everybody buys differently, right? Personally, stacking it doesn't fit my stacking mantra, but I absolutely do reward myself with something premium at least once a month, whether it's gold or silver. You don't want to get burned out on your stacking, right? I mean, what fun is it to go to the LCS, buy up a bunch of cool stuff, then go home, pack it in the darkness of the safe for who knows how long. I like to look at my stuff. So, as far as numismatics go, if you're a new stacker, don't get caught up in all the shiny Morgans and pre-33 golds you'll see here on YouTube. Build up a healthy base stack first. Then read some books before you start buying stuff you know nothing about. Don't try to keep up with other stackers showing off numismatics. They've been around, they've done the research, and they know what they're buying. Get some experience and education first. Also, you might want to try to avoid the temptation of slabbed government-backed bullion. Most of this stuff is mass-produced, and unless it's a key date, short run, or error, I just don't see the point in buying slab silver eagles, as an example, unless there's a certain theme on the slab that you really like. Honestly, for the most part, you're just buying bullion and paying more for the slab and the grade in most cases. Seems pointless, but that's just my opinion. Some love buying slab bullion, and if that works for them, then that's awesome. You got to buy what you like in the end. And rule number 1, ignore the YouTube silver pumpers, noise, and hype. I always avoid making silver and gold prediction videos for a reason. I'm not a financial guru who can break down the volatile nature of precious metals. Matter of fact, very few of us here can, legitimately. And there are a lot of stacking channels here on YouTube that are sponsored by companies, so they have an obligation to live up to their paycheck by selling the hype. And you'll see all kinds of crazy predictions and headlines to catch your attention. In the end, it's all about the clicks because the content just doesn't live up to the hype when it's all about speculation. So let me repeat the tip one more time. Very, very few content creators here on YouTube are qualified or even knowledgeable enough to predict where silver's going and how much it'll be valued in the years ahead. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. In my opinion, I think it's completely irresponsible for these channels to continue to pump out sensationalism. It never comes to fruition. And you know who they are. I'm not going to say names. If you've been on YouTube and you've been watching these videos, you already know who the channels are. It's not a big surprise. And let's not forget the talking heads. I mean, just look at some of the personalities like Lynette, Zang, Robert Kyosaki, who is actually an accredited and intelligent advisor and author. He does have some good points in anything but silver. And Keith Neumeyer. Good old Keith. These folks have been throwing silver predictions out there over the years and never seem to quite hit the nail on the head, especially Neumeyer. If these guys can't do it accurately, why would you trust a YouTuber telling you how high silver is going to go? And you need to buy up as much as you can right now. Right? Doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not saying there aren't knowledgeable channels out there. Oh, they're definitely there. And I'm a fan of quite a few of them. But I am saying that the pumper channels need to be taken with a grain of salt. Use your head, folks. Build a smart stacking strategy that feeds off the strength of your budget, your portfolio. Avoid the hype train and stack within your means. Eventually, someday, that hype train might finally arrive at the station, or not. All right, there you have it. Be sure to drop me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this video. I'd love to hear from you. If you guys have any other tips that I didn't cover here, throw them out there. We've got new stackers joining the community every day. And just like we were at one point, they're looking for information, accurate information, not pumper information. Let's help them out. Let's give them a hand. That's what we're all about here. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. And if you made it this far, well, kudos to you. I will definitely catch up with you in the next episode. But in the meantime,
What do you want to do with your life?
damn right, get stacked. Stay safe and be well, everyone. I am out of here. Peace, folks.